Here we go. Welcome. So we begin week 2, and I've called this week Rewilding, which will become clear as we go through the hour as to why. And it's going to run in a very similar format to last week. So I've got some concepts that I'm going to talk through, and you can just let them kind of wash over you, wash through you, take what you need, leave what you don't. And then we're going to do a little bit of gentle movement, kind of starting to explore a little bit further somatics, what somatics looks like, what somatics might, the beginning of somatics journey for some of you, is further along the journey for others, and just taking some things away. I had some signatures last week, so I'm going to do the same this week, drop some things in that you can have a go at using if they resonate with you. Yeah, a little bit different, and I'll add them all into bands so you can see them, and they're all going to be in one coherent place. So do take notes if you need to take notes. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to think a little bit about what is a sensation? Very, very quickly touch on that. I thought that'd be quite a good place to start. We're going to be thinking about our experiences on our fertility experiences and how they don't happen in a vacuum. I am going to lean into a little bit of why I called this session Rewilding and use that as a kind of bit of a metaphor for where we're going tonight. And also we're going to think about anxiety, where it might show up for us, how it might show up for us. You kind of all have your individual stories with anxiety, where it might show up in the body. And when the body is lively, which tends to be what I call my anxiety now, it's like my body is very lively today, what we might do, some somatic work that we might do that might be able to support us if we're having that kind of day where that kind of energy is with us. So we're going to be looking at the things, I'm going to call them exit points of the body, and how we might work with those. So that's where we're going. And we're all here, I think, pretty much. Let's just do a little bit of dropping into our space. So lots of you look very cozy, look very snuggly. So maybe you just want to take it, you've got here. So maybe just acknowledge the fact that you're here on a 7 o'clock for most of you, some a bit earlier in the day for some of you. You're here, and take 3 nice breaths in your own time, in your own way. The inhale and the exhale, these 3 sweet breaths. Maybe it's the first time you've had this evening since your day has kind of blended into evening, just to connect with the breath. And just being in this energetic space, in this little mini community that we've gathered together for January. Maybe you just take a look along the screen. If your screen might be on or off, but there are people on the screen, there are people here with you, that I am here with you. We're all kind of traveling along together. And maybe we take that place that we rubbed last week. If you've got some balm with you, you might want to just give yourself, I haven't actually, I've got a little oil, so I'm going to do that. You might want to just connect with this yin-tang point between the brows. We all started a conversation last week, and how that conversation began and how it's unfolded in the week we've travelled will be different for everybody. There may be some things that you remembered the morning after, it may be that you've explored maybe some breaths, it may be that you've done absolutely nothing, and that is also fine. Maybe your conversation is happening on a Monday, and that's okay. So it all contributes, it all matters. It's not something we have to worry about if we're not doing it regularly. This might be enough. For some of you, it might have opened something up a little bit wider. Everything is good. Okay. I think we're going to start today by talking about what a sensation is. So right now, what I want you to do, a bit of the opposite of that, is actually find a place. Just maybe you just close the eyes down. Maybe you lower the gaze. Find a place in your body that is a quiet place. It is a place that is free of pain, free of sensation. So for me tonight, that is my left knee. There's nothing that my left knee is asking of me in this place. It isn't hurting me. And I'm going to place your hand in that place. If you've chosen the shoulder blade, that makes that. And just feel into that place. Maybe there's bone, maybe you feel skin. Maybe you feel maybe veins, if it's wrist, joints. Just feel this place that is causing you, it's just quiet and easeful. We might even say maybe there's not very much sensation in that place. And just kind of marvel at that, because I don't think we really notice the places quite often in our body until they speak to us. And a sensation, so you let that place go now. It's interesting, isn't it? Because sensation is going to be so wildly different for everybody. So last week, as we started a conversation, this listening into our body and the sensations in our body, that is not easy. So I don't want anybody thinking that is a straightforward and simple thing to do. We're very good at finding sensations when our nervous system might be activated, or maybe when places in the body are painful, or they're drawing their attention to this in a particular way. It might be after a run, we're quite aware of places in our body. If we've done a run, if we've done something exercising, maybe you get in a bath, you're aware that the bath is hot. We're aware of sensation when it's happening, but when we're in this quiet space, like a space like tonight, where we might all be, lots of you look like you're in quite a cozy space, you're in your home, it can be more difficult to track those sensations, and how they might show up might be really, really subtle. So you might, when you're in a yoga session and you're looking for sensation in your body, you could just look at points where the body is meeting fabric on the skin, where the body is meeting contact beneath the ground. It may be very, very subtle, and it's not something that might come necessarily that easy to us. So it's quite nice sometimes when our body has done something, perhaps like having a bath, or perhaps maybe you have just done some yoga, or you've done something where your body has moved, is actually noticing sensation when your body has done something, and then we can start to really look at more subtle sensation. So if you are someone that is navigating anxiety, it may be that that's when you are in that place where the body is being a little bit more lively. That's quite obvious to track, but it's about noticing things even when maybe we're not in anxiety, so that we can be listening in all of the time really carefully. And it will show up for people in lots of different places. So quite common places, if I'm asking people to feel sensation, or even to start to feel stories in the body, which is something that's quite interesting, that I've been working with quite deeply over the last few years, and where that might show up, I thought might be quite handy, and I really don't mind sharing where that shows up for me. But my places are unique, aren't they? They're my unique map, and you will have your own unique map. So quite often, if I am feeling sensation, perhaps I'm in emotional sensations, and I'm wondering where I'm feeling that in my body, quite often for me, that will be here, right in the very, very middle. So we might call it the solar plexus area. For me, it's in between like the breastbone and in between the navel. It's kind of here, almost diaphragmatic in the middle. Quite often for me, it shows up here. I have absolutely no way of knowing why I quite often feel emotion here. It's quite possibly a lesser known place for people to feel emotion. Quite often people that I'm working with talk about feeling things in the throat. So maybe if they're feeling quite, maybe it's a day you're feeling quite angry, you might feel that even in your hands. So it's about starting to notice, this is interesting, I'm feeling this, and where might I feel it in the body? You might not be able to connect those two things. You don't need to know the reason why. It's this kind of general, like kind of very subtle, gentle curiosity. And I like to then kind of befriend those places a little bit. So the sensation might be tingling, it might be just this kind of general awareness, it could be quite subtle. For me, quite often, I do have a lot of tension in my pelvic floor. Now, when we start to think about fertility related stories that our body might be holding, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, that might be where we might hold tension, or where we might notice that tension. If we think about the things that we go through, really from the beginning of menstruation right the way through our female lives, there's a lot of places that we can pick up those kind of stories. And I'm thinking about things like even maybe having a smear, things that happen to us along the way, hips, groin, lower back, lots of places where we might start to hold tension. But essentially, it isn't particularly that we need to make a story with that. It's this lovely conversation of noticing and self-compassion and being aware and softening. So the story could be interesting if we've got someone that we are working with that might be able to support us through that story. But actually we can do quite a lot of softening just by noticing places and spaces. And I think if we think about we talked last week about the worry that goes on in our mind and the work that we do in our mind to try and make sense of anxiety and this loop that we have between body and mind, and how quite often we're working from like here and kind of maybe feeling a little bit, or might be divorced from what's happening in the body. I think it's important to remember that that doesn't mean that there aren't things happening in the body, even though we're not realizing it, because we may be dissociated from those feelings, and maybe the sense of freeze from those feelings. And it's not choiceful that we do that. It isn't something that we actively decide not to feel things. I think it's just sometimes the way that that kind of goes, and that we're almost kind of like, it's too much to feel things. I read something somewhere, or I think I saw it on probably on Instagram, it's where I am most of the time, someone describing it like a beach ball that you're kind of trying to keep under the water, and we can do that for so long, but then it's quite interesting, isn't it, that the body will kind of might start to speak to us a little bit more loudly in that kind of, when we're thinking about physical anxiety. And the interesting thing about anxiety, and I am specifically going to talk about panic attacks here, and panic attacks might not be playing out for everybody that's watching this, but it might be that you just have some days where things are feeling, you just like a kind of generalized anxiety, but we might not always know why. And that can kind of show up at times that are very, very unexpected to us. So it might be that we've just pulled up at the lights, traffic lights, we're on our way somewhere, maybe we're on our way somewhere quite nice, and all of a sudden we're starting to feel that we're getting very, very anxious. And I have not liked that for a long period in my life. I felt that very frustrating. And I spoke to somebody this week, you're here, so you'll know the story, that quite often I would, and this still could happen to me. I could go somewhere like a lovely spa day or a retreat and find that I could have a panic attack while I'm there kind of sat by the side of the pool. And we don't need to really know why that is, because it's a constellation. So we pull up at the traffic lights and we're feeling that feeling. It could be the time of year. It could be that a piece of music, something that is very, very subconscious. So that kind of, I am so much softer now when that kind of quite a lively reaction happens to me, and I meet it with curiosity, but I don't necessarily need to know the reasons why. And quite often, if we have been in a bit of a dissociated free space for whatever reason, maybe life is moving very fast, or maybe we haven't had a chance to process things, it can be for the physical body that when it does feel in a safe place, and it is starting to be able to move out of those spaces, and it would move back up through the sympathetic nervous system, that it can let us know that maybe we need to pay attention, and things maybe have been feeling a little, the body's been feeling things that we haven't been connected with. So I hope that resonates with some of you. Let me know if it does. You can always send me a message and say, yeah, that's familiar, and we might not always know why. So it's about what we do with it when we find ourselves in that place. If we're having a period of time where things feel very lively, how could we work with the body to maybe move some of that through, which you're going to have a little look at tonight. And then something that I wanted to weave in today is how noisy the world is that we live in. Yeah, we've got some, thank you for adding in the chat, spot on for me. I think it probably will resonate for quite a lot of people. So I'm going to put a little thing out here that I find interesting. I've carried around with me for quite a long time now, because it helps me to navigate my way through the world. In that every single day, the human brain takes in roughly, this is the different statistics out there that you can find, 11 million pieces of information. Well, that's every second, and every day the equivalent of 74 gigabytes of information. So you're thinking 11 million pieces of information, how is that possibly happening? But if you look around the room that you're in, or if you think of yourself in, I don't know, I think I mentioned it last week, a busy bar, and you hear someone right the other way talking about mentioning your name, you would know that that was happening, because we're kind of reading the room all of the time. It's a lot. And that information, that 74 gigs, 500 years ago, that would have taken somebody a lifetime to accrue that kind of information through learning, through, I don't know, maybe access to some literature. So that's staggering to me, that in a day now, the human body and the human brain is exposed to the same amount of information that somebody 500 years ago would have accrued in their life. So if we use that as a kind of lens to think about why our nervous systems might be activated in terms of having to read so much information. That kind of just makes so much sense to me, that there's a lot, isn't there? And a lot of that is coming through our phone. It isn't all coming through our phone. It's things that we read, it's things that people say, it's it's navigating our way around the world, and this is the landscape that we're in, going for a walk. But a lot of it will be coming through our media. And I think the thing that I wanted to bring into this session before I talk about this concept of rewilding is that when we are on a fertility journey, when we are on different journeys in that landscape, wherever we may be, it may well be, and it might not be true for everybody here, that a chunk of that information that we're seeing every day, this masses of information, those gigabytes, is made up of fertility related information. And I think that comes in many different shapes. Those of you who've known me a long time will have heard me talk about this before. It may be nutritional information. It may be the information that you're picking up when you're trying to look into something or specific that you're covering. It may be other people's stories that we connect with in the TTC community and beyond. Wonderful relationships, but tendrils of other people's stories that wind their way around into our story sometimes. It might be what's out there at the moment, healing messages, conscious conception. I've noticed mold being talked about a lot in the accounts that I follow, that wasn't being talked about 5 years ago. So it kind of goes through iterations, I think, of things that are salient at the time. It's a lot. And I think where I say I'm going to be the boldest in this 4 weeks is actually thinking about our feed and what we're seeing, and muting and unfollowing things that really aren't making you feel, or anything that's making you feel lesser, I think, or anything that might be activating that or making you feel like, for an example, for me, I remember getting rid of all of my cosmetics and shampoos and replacing all of that. I'm sure some of you have been through that experience. It's about looking at what we're seeing all the time, and if there are kind of featured people or feature accounts or feature or a particular book, probably heard me say it before, those of you who've been with me for a while, free yourself, guys. That might be something that you free yourself from while you're here in January, whatever that narrative. It may not be even that you're in that narrative so much anymore, but the current narrative that you're in, what could you liberate yourself from? Rewilding yourself, which brings me quite nicely into this kind of concept of rewilding. I love it as a word. I was going to make it fit, and I have. And it's this concept, isn't it, that we use in ecological conservation in terms of, almost kind of relinquishing the land back to native plants and native animals. And human rewilding, for the purpose of the Balm, I'm thinking of this process where we kind of reawaken our essential nature that we came into this world with, letting sensations have their space in the body and letting them have their place within us and taking up our own space on this planet. So it's kind of rewilding from within, finding your own space and letting go of some of this noise, so that other things, maybe inherent things or intuition, all of those things, actually we can let them bloom. And particularly with nervous systems, I think it is about embracing our anxious body with this kind of same love and friendship as we might embrace that easeful body. And that's not easy, but this concept of what I'm really like doing at the moment, because I'm so kind of, if we think about these flowers that bloom, particularly in wild fields, maybe in the Arctic tundra, you have this kind of point in the year where everything comes into bloom. It's maybe for quite a short period. Same really for lots of flower meadows. It's a relatively short space. When I'm having a really anxious day, and please know that I'm not delivering this and all my anxiety is eradicated. We have a much friendlier relationship now. But when my body is letting me know, maybe I've got a bit of churn in my tummy or a bit of butterflies, or how else does it quite often show up for me? Quite often for that, or I notice that I'm not breathing very well and everything feels like quite a lot. I actually think of those flower fields, and I kind of think of my anxiety as it's kind of like, this is me being rewilded, and it's actually a very simple visual analogy for me, but it does feel very comforting rather than kind of seeing it as anxiety can, very easy to see anxiety as something it's a bit fearful, or maybe it's got a particular shape and colour that isn't very friendly. And actually repainting my palette, repainting my canvas is what I mean with that imagery has helped me quite a lot. And it's a reintegration, and rewilding is kind of a lifelong process. If we decide that we're going to let some of this thing go and step into welcoming anxiety as much as ease, then that's not a standalone thing. That isn't going to happen in the course of 4 weeks in the barn, but I think it's a really nice place to start. So we're going to carry on with that a little bit, and we're going to move. We're going to stand. I would like to play some music. I have got my playlist on. I'm going to leave you a little bit of time just to get that on and get it poised and count you in. Put a new song at the beginning. I think I might have thrown a new one in at the end, but for the most part, it's our kind of theme tunes. And I have got my big camera on, so I'm going to zoom out in a minute. Right, I'm going to count you in. So I've got Loom in 3, 2, 1. So you're with me now. And hopefully you've got some standing space if you're going to move with me somewhere in your room. I'm going to zoom myself out so you can see me. Here we go. Look, there. I've gone big, small. I'm going to take off my socks so I can really feel the earth below. And we're going to come to a standing point tonight for a bit. We're going to work with some different things, some different signatures. So if you're not too cold in the UK or wherever you may be, take socks off. It's really nice because you can really connect to the floor below. And taking a kind of hip distance, a little bit wider stance than that, taking our space up in the world. And just as we did last week, we are going to look around the room. Maybe take a deep breath, looking really slowly, looking over to my right here. And then I'm going to bring myself to centre, and I'm going to look around to the left. I'm looking around my room, I'm noticing things, I'm noticing shapes, I'm noticing textures. I'm going to do that twice tonight. So I'm going to look over, back to the right, track the room, the ceiling, the floor, finding your space in the world. We look down at our screens a lot, back to the centre, and we are forward-looking mammals, like to look to the horizon, so that we know where we are. Little look, maybe even look behind your left shoulder a little bit, corners of the room, and bring yourself back to centre. Start to notice yourself in time and space. Maybe you lower the gaze, maybe you can close the eyes. You might notice the body moving slightly forward and back, side to side. Think of the geography of your house on the road, the street, the lane, in connection to the nearest village and town, city, the country that you're living in. You can zoom out further like you're on Google Earth, zooming out to the globe that you are standing on the planet. Your space in the world. And we're going to think about boundaries tonight. So I think that goes quite nicely hand in hand with rewilding and knowing your own boundary. So I'm going to ask you to bring your hands up to your shoulders. And we're just going to circle our arms forward a few times. It should feel quite nice, a little stretch. We're going to move them back a little bit. We're beginning to feel into our kinesphere now, which is the boundaries of where our body is in time and space. We're going to do that by taking our arms nice and wide. You take up a particular space in the world, your kind of personal space. And you might spin over to the side so you can get a sense of where you are in the room, as much as your walls allow. Bring your arms up, almost like you can feel this like orb around you of where your personal space is. So really reach out with your arms and find the distance of where that is. You can kind of notice, even take a look behind you where your personal space, your boundary. I love the word kinesphere. Might whack that in as a signature. Maybe turning the palms up and down. And then as you bring the arms down now, we're going to think about our boundaries within our personal space boundary, within the kind of places where we meet the earth. So maybe you're rubbing the hands down the legs, going right the way down to the feet, maybe even skim the soles of your feet. And bringing your hands really slowly up to torso, up to the arms, and you can kind of feel out one arm here, feel out one arm here, and really sensing where you are, where your skin is, your skin meets the clothes. Seeing the sense of boundaries. And later on, after this session, you might spend a bit more time thinking about boundaries. You might think about your boundaries in your life with your relationships. And this kind of exercise can actually be very useful when you're thinking about boundaries, of just knowing where you are in time and space. And take hand on your heart, take another nice big in breath now. And then letting the arms go. As you breathe out, breathe down through the body. Down, as if you're breathing down through the torso, the pelvic floor, breathing right the way down through the legs. Breathing in. And breathe another breath nice down through. We're going to start to work with exit points. So we're imagining this scenario. You take another breath down the body, breathing right down into the ground, where we are moving energy. So if we're having a day or a moment or an hour, or even if we're verging on this sense of panic, we can actually start to move energy. We're going to do that tonight. And the down breath can be really nice at sending things right the way down. So you're down breathing. Let's do one more big down breath. So breathing in. Maybe with the eyes even closed, you breathe all the way down. Like you're breathing down the legs, down to the ground below. So we've got our 2 feet as exit points. We have got hands as exit points. And they're really useful. And we're going to do a little bit of movement in here, and I'm going to talk you through how I like to introduce this in my way. So animals in the wild, you know this, and if you're familiar with somatics in any form, you will know that animals, if animals have had a shock or a trauma, quite often animals will shake. And one of the things that really put me off going to somatic work or doing things that looked very somatic, so I didn't really want to shake my body, it felt awkward to me. So we're going to do some really subtle things tonight that kind of you can feel into that, and it may be a doorway through to working out how you might want to use your body. And knowing that we are socially conditioned to be quite inhibited to do this. And you'll all be lovely to know people's biographies that are watching this, because some of you will feel not much inhibition. You might be really familiar with dancing, you may be familiar with somatic practices already. So maybe that's going to feel really quite strange to be able to think about moving your body in an intuitive way. Okay, so we're going to take it really slowly, but you have my invitation too, if you watch this back, to go a little bit more wild. So imagine we can move this energy out. Let's start by, first of all, doing some really gentle, coming up to our tips of our toes, the balls of our toes, back onto the heels. So we're just going to gently move ourselves up and down. So we're noticing that we're moving in time and space, and it's almost quite gentle swaying. You might come onto the balls of the toes quite high. You might just be rolling very, very gently back from ball to heel, from ball to heel. And then we can soften the knees, and we can just, and you can watch me, if you feel silly, you can just watch and think, what would that look like for me? You can just gently start to move. Closing the eyes works really well for me, because I can actually just follow what my body wants to do. It can be really slow. And the knees are bouncing, I'm moving my hands a little bit, it's quite instinctive. And the more you play around with this, the more you're trying to shake out a feeling. So if I've got a feeling, I'm feeling really kind of frustrated, maybe I'm feeling quite anxious, disappointed, I can start to really shake. Music helps me to do this. And you might see when you start looking into somatics, you're seeing people really shaking. And I'm not necessarily, I'm going to bring you back to a still point, I'm going to get you doing that tonight, because I want this to be so gentle, so that you understand, if you want to work somatically with the body, what we're trying to do. And we're trying to, in this session, release. And if we think about rewilding and letting go of our inhibitions, that's a good way to do it. So let's look at these exit points. And I'm going to ask you to raise your right leg and do a little bit of shaking of your leg. Now, if you're into shaking and it's feeling quite good, you could give it a really good shake. You might want to just gently rotate the ankle. Maybe give it some little tiny shakes. See what happens if you shake your foot around like that. Minding ankles, if ankles are a sensitive point, where you can really kind of shake that leg out. And if you start to imagine it's a time where you're feeling quite agitated, maybe you're waiting for some news, maybe you're waiting for something, and you kind of start to shake this out through the exit point of the right foot. And we can do it on the left. So for you, it might be that you're just finding balance and you're just doing some gentle swirls, thinking, okay, I'm going to go with this. Or you might start to really kind of shake it out, almost like you are really getting rid of something that feels charged, feels heavy, letting it go. You can do the same with the arms. So we've got these two exit points here. Maybe give your arm a rub. I'm going to start with my left arm, finding its point in contact, and then maybe you just do the same, shaking it away. Maybe think about something today where you think, I'm going to let that go. Give it a shake. Might feel good, it might feel silly. You're going to welcome it all. If you've got pets, they're probably wondering what you're doing. And then you let that be still. And then give it a go on the other side, right arm. You might do a little bit of stroking feel if you want to warm it up. I've gone straight in for it. I'm going to rotate. If I close my eyes, I find it a lot easier just to let it be fluid. And you might even bring the hands up. And that's where it starts to get a little bit instinctive. You might think, I'm going to, which bit of me, which exit point, if you stand and notice, do I want to shake again? So you could go with it with the leg. You could think, I'm going to do it all. So let's give it another little shake. You could just be watching me. I don't mind. Okay. Discharging, discharging. Another really good thing to do, some of you have done this with me lots of times before, is swaying. So you bring your arms. Imagine this scenario where you're actually feeling something that's quite a lot. And you might have seen this called knocking on heaven's door. You can do it really slowly. You can actually bring some kind of speed to it. It's quite a nice thing to do. Quite often we listen to yoga classes. Just really finding that rhythm. And it should feel nice. And then bring yourself to a still point. You might want to adjust the feet. They might have gone a little bit wider. Find that grounding. Bring the hands to the heart. And notice your heartbeat. And if you have gone for a bit of a shake, here is a sensation. Simply the sensation of your heart beating the blood around your body. And breathe into that. Take 3 more breaths into your heart. Notice what it feels like to have shaken a little bit. Notice it physically. Notice compassionately how maybe you felt about doing that. You don't have to. And then take a look at your exit points, take a look at your hands, take a look at your feet. I'm going to show you something else now. It's a bit tricky for me to show you without really showing you my bum. If you're near a wall now, that doesn't have lots of things on it, great, get yourself to a wall. And we're going to, I call this truncating emotion. It's almost like giving an emotion some kind of exit point. So it's a really good one if you're feeling angry, feeling frustrated too, and this is why you kind of lose me, but I will turn around. So you find the wall and your hands, flat up your hands, are going to meet the wall, and you find the position that feels good with your feet so that you can press. For me, I quite like my feet quite far away from the wall, almost as if I was like doing a down dog position at the wall. And you just press away, imagining all of that emotion, that feeling, sensation almost being discharged through the exit points of the body as you push, and noticing the strength of your body as you do that. And then as you let it go, you might just think, what bit of me wants to move? Okay, so I'm there, I've been pushing that feeling away, and now how could I let it move? Okay, so we're finding this route out some of these feelings that can be overwhelming and that we can carry. Okay, another really good one, if you're carrying residues of grief is to actually imagine that you're making space. So come back down now on your knees. I'm going to show you something that we can do. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see my face. I'll zoom in and out so you can see my body. So finding a kneeling place, if that's good for your knees, this doesn't quite work out for you. You could just use the arms and do it from seated, but I quite like to do it with kneeling. So I'm going to kneel, and then what we're going to do is we're going to come up. So we're going to kneel and come down. So almost like the hands are moving, just to get our kind of position going. And then we're going to start to integrate the arms. So we're moving in a way that we can bring in space. So we're going to circle the arms up as we come up and bring the arms down. So we're making this, imagine this feeling that we've got, maybe something that we haven't been able to feel very much of, actually carving out, like making space for it. So we're thinking about how we can move emotion and move sensation. So if we're noticing we're carrying butterflies in our solar plexus, and they're carrying around with us for some time, you can start to actually make space for the butterflies. You can bring lots of visual to it. Marrying the breath. Exhaling our way down, and a nice big inhale up. Let's do 2 more of those. Think of something that you'd like to make lots of space for in your body. And then coming back down. Bringing yourself up. And bringing yourself down. Bringing yourself onto the floor. Finding a comfortable seat. So let's just think about those things again. We are mammals. We are moving mammals that should have a way to process things that happen to us, and it doesn't happen. So we've got these exit points. We've got a sense of drawing boundary. We can incorporate shaking. It may be that you have to come to classes or find classes to allow you to have space to do that. You may be able to do it by yourself. It's something to explore. It's part of the conversation. You may feel inhibited to do that, and that is absolutely fine. And then we can push things away. We can make space for them. And we don't have to have words to do that. We might need privacy, we might need space to be able to do that. But it's all about this somatic body moving, connecting it with sensation, connecting it with emotion. So we're here, we're cross-legged. I'm going to bring another thing in now. Some of you will know this, many of you might know this, but I wanted to weave it into the Balm nonetheless. Is this notion of embracing. So I want you to bring your arms nice and wide, nice and stretched. In fact, let's bring them overhead. Let's actually pull the energy down to the heart. And opening the arms nice and wide, maybe take a big inhalation. We're going to bring ourselves into an embrace. Notice what arm goes over the other arm, notice what arm's underneath. And we talked about this notion of connection with the body. The hug is very underutilized. It may be that you actually rub your back body as if you were hugging yourself, and bringing maybe the eyes closed, really imagining that you are embracing yourself. But we're going to build onto this hug. And if you loosen the arms down a little bit, so you've got one hand on either side, you can notice what my arms are doing here. The butterfly hug, you might be familiar with it. We don't always remember the things that we know might soothe. Butterfly hug is a really nice contained place to be in. So if we start to think quite specifically about points where we might feel very overwhelmed and perhaps panicked, maybe we're having a panic attack. Maybe we are in a place where the waiting and the worrying of something is driving us really kind of up the wall. This containment, having one arm over, you can see where I'm holding, can feel very, very soothing because you're containing the physical body. And you can bring in taps. So start to find a tapping pattern that works for you, your butterfly. Maybe one tap on each side. It may be that you experiment with doing 2 or even 3 on one side, 3 on the other, whatever is right. There's No hard and fast rules. We're kind of crossing hemispheres. It's that soothing pat that we might give somebody quite instinctively when we're soothing them. We're soothing ourselves. And you can actually do a different version where you cross the thumbs over, placing them over the chest. You can see that butterfly shape, and you just bring the taps like that. I use this sometimes if I'm in hospital waiting rooms. I'm waiting in the car, I'm waiting for some news. Butterfly hug. So let's just do a few more of those. Maybe you close the eyes and actually notice the rhythmic sensation of your hands on your body. And then let them be still. Just staying in this section of your embrace. We're going to bring the knees up so that you're bringing yourself into a little cave and embracing the knees and lowering the head. So another lovely place of containment and also a place of quietness. And a mantra that I like on days I have when my body is lively, when my flowers are blooming, particularly if it's been a fairly acute hour, I say to myself, moments of protection happen for everyone. Maybe you put the head onto the knees. Hear your breath. Moments of protection happen for everyone. Just let things settle. It's quietude. We're weaving in the language, the metaphor, the movement to tell our anxious body that it's safe, that it is embraced and loved. And from this place, I'm going to invite you to lie in a way that is comfortable for you and your body. We will rest. Find a pillow, eye pillow. Everything you need. It could be something with a blanket if you're cool. You've taken socks off, you might want to put them back on. And there is a reason that I ran this month and didn't run yoga this month, is that for those of you who have a yoga practice, sometimes the act of yoga, for me, whilst it has lots of elements of this and I can arrive into this space that I need to be in, sometimes the technical aspects of yoga, or at various points in my yoga practice throughout my 30 years of yoga, the subtleties of this can get lost. I might be thinking about alignment, I might be thinking about sequence, I might be thinking about things, and I've taken that out so we can actually really recalibrate with our bodies. But then if you do have a regular yoga practice, you can weave some of these things in. So hopefully now you've all landed, you're comfortable. If there's anything you need to tweak to make yourself a little bit more comfortable, you can do it. You can change your shape whenever you need. Start to feel yourself unspooling. We are exploring, and some of you might be exploring new things. So let all of the rest of this hour fall away. Feel the holding of the earth's embrace from underneath, the earth rising up to meet you. And anything that feels too big to hold, you can almost imagine there are taps or valves in the body. You can open them and let that drain out into the earth. Anything you carry from the day, the week, your journey, letting it flow downwards into the earth. And you can feel then the earth recharging you through these connection points, bringing back a sense of buoyancy, sense of aliveness. And you're calling your energy back home. Drawing threads back into residency with each in-breath. Having this sense of energy returning to you through your field. It's coming back into the wholeness of the body. And welcome yourself home. Your rewilded self. Letting the body be rested. Letting the temple of the body be breathed. And let the places within you simply be. Places that long for the sacred wild and places that long for the untamed. The ancestral memories of your bones know your place in the world. And you know that this world has capacity for beauty. And you were born in homeostasis, in this perfect balance, primed for purpose. You are by nature a wayfinder. And you are never far from your truest home in this body. So rest now into this sense of returning. And let all language fall away. And simply let your body be. And start to notice your breath. Simply the breath coming in and making its way out. Start to notice any sounds you can hear. Start to gently move some fingers and toes. Maybe you hug the knees into the chest, or you take a long stretch of the body. Kind of animalistic stretching. And you can bring yourself onto a side, no need to hurry, bringing yourself back up to the screen. Finding a seat, maybe finding a little bit of length in the body, letting the breath move freely. And we take a nice stretch together. But let's take 3, we're using the number 3. So stretching up, bringing the energy down, bringing it up. Big in breath, maybe bringing the energy down, maybe bringing the hands, bringing the hands back up. Raining down the fingers. Finding a comfortable landing place with the fingers. We'll do a little bit of recap of where we've been. Hello. I've got a poem I want to finish on as well. So, rewilding. Our bodies are existing in this really noisy broadcast. And I love this sense of untamed movement. You know, it is instinctual, it's intuitional, it's unlearning inhibition, which is, you know, no small act. We accrue that over a lifetime. But finding your own way of thinking, how can I use my body? What does actually feel good? And it's so different for everybody. For me, it's been deeply freeing. And we can't choose all of the stimuli that we're exposed to, and a lot of our anxiety is far beyond conscious thought. But we can choose some of our feed. So maybe that's a little point of homework this week. Just notice that voice that is not sitting well, making you feel lesser. Free yourself. Here's a little bit of homework that I'm going to give you, which is the challenge. Anyone who manages to succeed doing this year, I'll be very proud of. You can get some seeds called calendula seeds that will grow just about anywhere. You can pick them up in supermarkets, you can pick them up all over the shop, they're very cheap. There will be a day that comes in the spring, which I will alert you to, where you can just go and scatter them somewhere. Could be in your garden if you've got a garden, could be somewhere, a bit of guerrilla gardening, a patch of landscape. They will grow, you can trust in that. And they're going to be your physical representation of your rewilding. So I will write that in band, I will write the name of the seed, I'll write what you need to do, don't need to do anything, just scatter them. They're like super growers. You could use another flower, you know, you could grow some sunflowers this year or something like that. Rewild. I'm going to finish with a poem, and then I'll let you go into your night. And this poem is by someone called Bridget Anna McNeil. I will put it in band. Remember who you are. Not the shape others have put on you, not the story they handed you, not the lies or needs that were pressed into your psyche, not even your own imagined ideas of what you should be, but the real you, the wild innate you that is breathing under all of those should be's and all of those untruths. Remember the feel of it, the shape of it. Let it inhabit you like golden weeds rewilding the concrete. Good night, my lovely Balmers. I am here if you've got any questions. We'll obviously be in in our band. And yeah, talk to me if you've got things you want to ask, and do let me know. I'm going to press stop record now.